Hello, everyone. Welcome to a two-part series on the lovely Boeing 707-320. And now you can see that this aircraft is currently in the process of making another airplane, so we should probably give it some privacy. But no, this is absolutely an incredible plane, and it's one of those things that's always been one of my favorites for so many reasons, the least of which, of course, is for those of you familiar with the movie Airplane, you're looking at it. But the other thing is, it's just not a very big plane. There's 737s that hold more than this thing. But that being said, let's jump inside. So first things first, this video is dedicated to systems, and I'm basically getting it started. It is not going to be dedicated to doing a complete flight. That'll be the next video. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is a very complex airplane in the sense that we have buttons all over the place. We have buttons above our head. We have circuit breakers. It is so complex, and as a matter of fact, we have a navigator with a little navigator station. We can turn his air on to be nice to him, kind of a thing like that. And of course, we have the flight engineer station, where most of the focus of today's video is going to be. Now, you probably see things like this on a 727, but the 707 just takes it one step further, is really the best way to describe it. So the first things first is all of our electrical components are all here on the upper left here. All of our pressurization components are going to be basically right here in the middle. All of our coolant systems, which thankfully are automated in this particular version of this aircraft. We don't have to fiddle with any of these, although in other airplanes we would. Our fuel injection system is right over here should we need it. We have some passenger. We might as well give some air to our lovely flight engineer here. Our fuel panel is going to be right here in the middle. Engine controls are going to be right here. And when you float down here, you have all your hydraulic systems and your APU. Oh my goodness, I did mention the fact that there was quite a bit going on with this aircraft. Don't worry though, it's like I said, we're just going to be going one at a time to make this nice and easy. Let's start at the top. So the first thing we need to do is get some electrical power in this aircraft. Now, normally what you do, of course, is you'd use a GPU, and that basically plug you in, and we could, I love that there's a ground light switch there. Like, I just find that kind of cool. And of course, we pop that to the on position. That would give us kind of that external power. Now, the cool thing here is I never actually ordered up external power, so you can see this is just sitting here looking kind of blank at us. So it's not going to do anything unless I went ahead and went through that process. But that's okay, because we have an APU on this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to float up top, and we have a lovely switch. This is battery. I'm going to go ahead and flop that on. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a bunch of angry warnings here. You can see our battery's got 21 to 20, almost 24 volts. Pop that on. You can see it immediately gets loaded down because we basically turned on every lights in this aircraft. 3 amps, that's enough. That's enough. We definitely got to get some power going through this thing real quick. So I'm going to pop this over the APU position real quick. That's looking pretty good too. Again, we'd have a separate APU battery in the event that we get in trouble, but that's all right. Pop this over to Essential. This is our transformer rectifier combined unit, and now we have just enough juice in this thing to get the APU started. So to do this, we're going to pop this into the on position first, give it a half a moment, and then we're going to pop it into the start position. When we pop it to the start position, it's going to be very, very, very hard to hear, but way in the back of this airplane, this thing's going to start spinning up, and now you can see, for some reason, our little needle doesn't work properly, but the startup process does work. Now, we have a couple different things we could do with our APU, and in the real world, what they would do is they'd start it, give it some time to basically kind of, get itself to temperature. Remember, these are older units. These are not, modern 757-300s or anything along those lines. These are very much classic. One thing that always bothers people is the APU percentage won't go all the way up depending on the situation, and it'll actually come up and down depending on the demand on this aircraft. So I'm going to go and press the generator on. That's going to show you that we've got plenty of AC, and of course I'm going to open up the bleed valve, which you can see immediately causes the exhaust temperature to spike, which is okay. That means it's working properly. Now that's going to do a lot for us. Now when I float up here, you'll notice, for example, that my Essential now, I've got plenty of voltage, about 24 volts, and I've got a load of about positive 5 amps. It's going to settle down as the battery charges up, as you can see very clearly here. And again, we can go through the different ones, and you'll see my battery is now charging at about 2.5 amps, so it's working perfectly fine. Like I said, nothing we need to worry about yet. So swinging over here, we have our galley power. You want to turn that on, otherwise, no coffee. No coffee is bad news for us. All right, let's go take a look. Battery's working fine. We know that we're running off the APU. Don't panic with all the orange lights. It's part of the fun of all this. So we can come down here very quickly and just kind of zip through everything. You can see right now, like I said, we're not running, that thing's running at the moment, so we're not going to have anything to show just yet. And if we wanted to, of course, we could come down here and we could go double check to see what our synchronization and what our course and our voltage. Everything's down here. The reason I'm taking the time to point all these things out is just to remind you how much this is going to make you insane a little later on. You'll see what I mean. All right, let's migrate to the middle panel. Now, there's a lot of things we can do here, and one of the things you'll notice is we actually have an open hole on the side of our wing, we can actually open up to help get a little bit of extra pressure. The other thing you'll observe is we have this big switch for the purposes of turning on basically our packs, if you want to think of it. Now, one of the crazy things is if I pop the pack switch on the ground, you will notice it will not engage. Now, the reason it will not engage is it's not nearly powerful enough to do that right now. So unfortunately, you're all going to have to melt in the cockpit. One thing you do notice, however, if I float up here, is our current air duct has got about 42 psi. I'll call it 44 psi, which is going to be plenty of pressure to get our big old engines going. Now, with that all taken care of, we can take a look at our pressurization system. They make it nice and easy for this one. They basically allow you to open or close the valves if something went wrong. But there's this little valve right here, a little fan, and when you hit that, that's going to open those little twisty valves that are above every passenger's head to allow them to have a little bit of comfort as well. Swinging over here, you have your cabin pressure control. The basic short version of the way this does is you sit here and you set your desired altitude. Now, the fun thing is a lot of people forget about this. So let's say, for example, I set my desired altitude to 8,000 feet. The cabin altitude, of course, will basically go through and do that. Now, the one thing you'll notice here, too, is we have ourselves a handy-dandy cabin pressure control. As long as you keep it in the middle, you don't have to worry about it. If you want it to go up, if you want it to go down, you have the ability to do that manually in the event something actually fails on board. Now, one of the things I was hearing from an old timer with these airplanes is what would happen is people's cigarette smoke would basically clog the outlet. Cause all sorts of fun problems with that. Swinging over to here, luckily for us, this is not modeled, so we don't have to worry too much about the coolant air. You can set it to override. I mean, you can use stress switches. You can do all that stuff if you wanted to fiddle with it. Does not matter. We have an auxiliary heat valve. We're going to leave this one alone. It's not critical. If we want to kind of cook ourselves a little bit, we could do one of those things. But like I said, it's not that big of a deal. This stuff we're going to leave alone because, like I said, it's all going to be set. We're not going to be dumping any fuel. And, of course, we can see our oxygen's ready to go. With all of this stuff squared away, we can now swing to the fuel panel. Now, the fuel system on this aircraft, the panel at least, feels to me to be backwards. In my brain, fuel goes down into the engines rather than up into the engines. But the one thing you'll notice here is these switches are the ones that allow fuel to actually flow to the engines. These systems are basically how everybody is interconnected to each other. Now, when you first look at this thing, you get a little bit of a panic attack going, oh my goodness, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Don't worry. Things you really need to pay attention to with all this system is the temperature of the fuel, because again, if it freezes up, guess what doesn't work anymore? And the second thing is who's getting fuel from where. So right now, let's say, for example, we wanted to go ahead and use our center fuel tank for the purposes of running all of our engines at once. All you have to do is pass and study the flow of the fuel. Take a look. So we'd first of all boost, because that's going to get us pressure. The pressure would come through this one here. We get a warning light, by the way. If we pop that off, we should get orange lights, which we do. It's going to go down to this manifold here. You'll notice this manifold has 1, 2, 3, 4 individual valves. If I were to open up each one of these valves, you will notice that the fuel will now flow out of that manifold into this engine. Our entire aircraft right now is actually running off of the center fuel tank. Did you notice the fact that there were 4 here that we had to run? A little different. Now, let's go close it up and create a different scenario. Let's say that what we would like to do is we'd like to go ahead and run the entire airplane out of this fuel tank here. So what we would do is the same thing as we did before. Pressurize, and then we just follow. Some of the fuel is going to go into the engine, but some it's going to go into the manifold. So we can open up the manifold. So that means this fuel tank is being boosted, popped into here, and then sent to every single fuel system throughout the entire aircraft all at once. You can see how that starts to get a little complicated depending on what you're doing. This also means that when you're cruising around, if you're running all fuel pumps, none of the fuel would come out of the fuel pump. If you're running all fuel pumps at once, naturally it's going to try to balance and base itself on where the actual pressure is. Now, to complicate things even more, you will notice we have a pair of reserve tanks on this aircraft, and they're basically going to be chilling. They're very, very small tanks. By small, you can see, what do we got here? 700 kilograms each? That's not much. But if I open these suckers up, they will actually feed into these tanks, the number 1 and the number 4 tanks that now allow us to run fuel off the rest of the aircraft. Now, you're probably sitting here saying, what order do you use these things? Normally what you would do is you'd start basically on everybody, and then you switch over to the center fuel tanks. Remember, we don't want to have all that extra weight in the middle of the airplane, especially when the wings get lighter. Center fuel tanks would do the party, and then, of course, when the center fuel tanks run out, we'd run off of our wing fuel tanks as well. But again, something we'll deal with in a few moments. So with that all taken care of, now we need to start thinking about getting this thing started. I'll come back to this in a few moments. So what I'm going to do is float over here to our main panel, and we have a bunch of switches we need to hit to kind of get this thing started. First things first is I'm going to start with the flight recorder. Of course, we don't need it. We can leave that off. And of course, I'm going to open all of these panels. You notice the click button is up here for some reason. That's okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to float down here. And of course, we have a nice little old school navigation unit. I can go pop this into the nav position. The interesting thing here is we do not have a working Chiva, which is very sad. Like I said, it'd be so cool if we did. It doesn't work, but like I said, oh well. Working our way down here, we're just going to go straight across. Looks good to me. Look good to me. We have our pitot heat. I will turn that on in a minute. And we have the emergency light switch, which is the world's hardest to click button, as you can probably see. So what I like to do is actually to come underneath here and just reach under it and go click and snap the emergency lights to the on position. Couple switches. Gotta love that sound. Gotta love that sound. And of course, coming down here, we have a couple really nice HF radios. They don't do anything. You can fiddle with the switches, but nothing will happen. We also have these two lovely little tools for gyro compasses. They don't work. Don't bother with them either. And of course, coming down here, we've got our lights. So basically, we're looking for a navigation light and our beacon light, just like that. And that's going to go ahead and pop those on, just to sort of give everybody a little heads up. One thing I love is the fact that you got this little exterior loading system, which is just kind of fun. You have a runway light for the turn off, and of course, you have the strobe light, which you push in. It goes, it basically clicks, and I can see it's just sort of hanging out there. Like I said, kind of an interesting little, I don't know, it's a little different. I think it's kind of fun. All right, let's float down here for half a second here. Quickly go through. I'll get this thing booted up. The GPS and the navigation system don't play nice with each other, and I'll show you what I mean when we get there. And this is so sad. I literally love this unit. I can use this unit every day, every time, anywhere. It's just one of those things. But they just didn't simulate it. Sigh. All right, let's get everything squared away here. Believe it or not, these lights aren't on. They always made me panic the first time I saw it. Okay. Let's do it. So our lights are on. We have enough pressure. The party is ready to start. So one of the things I learned from this one, real quick here, is that you have a hydraulic system on board. And you can see right now the hydraulic pressure is basically at 0. Well, we have none. So if we wanted to get hydraulic pressure on the ground, for example, we wanted to do a controls check, what you'd actually have to do is you'd have to actually kick on your AC hydraulic pumps, which will work, and then you have to create the interconnect between it. Now, what you'll observe here is we have no pressure on the right side system because we don't basically have enough electrical power on that side of the plane to do the deed. Now, if I actually wanted to, we could actually interconnect these in the event that we had no hydraulic pressure in our brakes, for example. There we go. And now you can see clearly we have plenty of hydraulic pressure. And it's just kind of one of those things. You can actually see that my controls work perfectly fine, even though I have no engines running. Just kind of cool, if you ask me. So go ahead and pop those off, disengage that interconnect. Don't get panicky. There's nothing wrong with it. All right, back to the fuel page here. So for start here, again, the fuel tank, you can take a look at the quantities. We have 15,000 kilograms coming out of the middle, but obviously if you do 15 divided by 4, that's 4, which is less than 5. So these are going to go first. Let's get some boosts on. Click, click. Now, remember what I said earlier. This center fuel tank is doing nothing right now. It's actually blocked. So if we wanted to actually fill the rest of the aircraft, we have to open up these valves. Otherwise, like I said, nothing happens. Ain't no party like an introvert party. Like an introvert party, don't stop. Good luck finding where that's from. Okay, so we got ourselves set here. Looks set. Looks good. Looks good. Everything's all set. So we've got ourselves a pressure. We have our bleed air valves. Remember, this is getting air out, not necessarily getting the air in. And you can see how this is all set up individually. Do not touch those switches at this time. You'll see what I mean. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to reach up above my head. We're going to run up to the number 4 engine. We're going to grab the switch. We're going to grab it, and we're going to pull down and let go. Now I'm going to bring my head down here. What you're going to observe is that the engine power, the speed, starts to slowly rise. The gas temperature does not rise. And what we're looking for is this to actually peak. Now, the interesting thing is when you go to start this thing the first time, you'll notice it takes a very, very long time for this thing to get up to any sort of RPM. And when it starts to stall like it is now, you reach to the fuel handle and you grab it up, not all the way, but you grab it to the start valve position. This is just one of those little sneaky things they put in there that you might not notice. So you can see here our exhaust gas temperature is rising very smoothly. The N2 is rising smoothly. And of course, we don't have any, we have an EPR gauge. And of course, we also have ourselves our handy dandy N1 gauge, and everything's spinning. Oh man, just love those old school engines. Usually they tell you the name of the engine at the top of this row here, but that's perfectly fine the way it is. All right, it spins up quite smoothly, and once it gets to about 50% power, you're going to want to click it up to the idle position. Once it is in the idle position, it'll spin up the rest of the way, and the light will go off. Now this is where things get kind of interesting. Let me show you something kind of cool here. Now, if I float over here, let's go find the switch that I'm looking for. Bingo. You can see our duct pressure still chilling at about 44. Now, if I reach up here and I turn on the bleed air of this particular engine, you'll notice we're still sitting at 44. Now, watch this. If I were to come down here and actually shut off the bleed on the APU, what you'll observe is the fact that the duct pressure dropped to 0. You're sitting here going, wait, what? But the engine's producing pressure. What's it not working? The way they designed this aircraft is they actually have separate air conditioning air compressors per engine. Kind of different, huh? But what you'll notice here is my engine 4 right now has got no RPM in its air compressor. If I were to grab this and slam this into the start position and release it, you'll get a big angry warning saying the air pressure system is not liking you, and you'll notice the percent RPM of this air compressor is now spiking upwards. And if you come down here, what you'll observe is we are no longer sitting there at that kind of lame, remember we were like 0? You can now see we've actually got some pressure. We've got about, I'm going to call it 18 PSI. The problem is 18 PSI ain't enough to start an engine. So if we really want to get that engine started with a cross bleed, what we'd actually have to do is we have to float over to this engine, give it a tap, and what would happen is as that power comes up, the pressure would come up with it. Again, we didn't give it that hard of a tap here, so let's give it a little bit harder of a tap. Let's see here. Go ahead and give it some pressure. There it goes. So you can see that gets us 28 PSI, and it's actually climbing pretty smoothly. Now, the crazy thing is we actually have enough pressure here to actually start the next engine. So just as a demonstration of this, I'm actually going to run up here, grab that switch, and pop that into the on position. And now what you'll see here is theoretically, because we're only at 35 PSI, is this thing should take a little while to start spinning up. But they're being very generous to us with our cross bleed start. So that's about 15-20%. Come back here, we can go ahead and snap this back up to the start position like that, and you will see we can actually get a start just because we've got that air compressor going here. And again, you need a little bit of RPM to get this going. And if you're an awful human being, you'd pull that throttle back at some point. And of course, if you were to do that, you'd be very unhappy with the results because the engine would basically stall and the fuel would shoot, basically have a really high temperature start, and you'd have to cross your fingers that nothing else bad happened during that process. Go ahead and pop that one there. Let's get it to at least 45 again. It's taken over on its own. Check the start switch should have reset by now. It did. All right, cool. So now I can go ahead and set that back to what it was a second ago. This one's going to spool back down, but you can see normally your temperature would come up a little bit and it would kind of sink back again. But just to give you an idea of how complex this thing could be, go ahead and close those two switches and let's go back over here. Now, take a look here. Since we're at idle, we're only about 18 PSI. So let's swing back up here. Let's open up the number 3 and let's turn on the compressor for the number 3. Give it a few moments. It shoots up. And as you can see here, we're still only about 18 PSI. I just give you an idea of how low the pressure is on the system without giving you that kind of little bit of a kick. But the cool thing is we still have the APU running. So if we wanted to cheat through the rest of the way, we can actually pop that APU on like that. And you can see that gives us plenty of duct pressure for this particular purpose to go ahead and kick off the other ones. Now, because we have so much duct pressure, we can do some awful things. And you could see both of these engines will happily start if you have enough pressure going through the ducts at any given time. This is generally a dangerous procedure only on account of the fact that you're really working those compressors out right now. And these would never spool up this fast. They basically be a little sticky. So we'll go ahead and set this back up to the start position. That should be enough to get us some fuel flowing through it. There it goes. You can see we're getting a smooth start. Gas temperatures coming up evenly. In the real world, they're never this even. Like, I love the concept that they're this even, but that's just not what happens in the real world. The other thing that bothers me is we have no EPR right now, which is, it's a little strange. No, we do. It's just really hard to say. And of course, if we wanted to, we could set this to a specific number. Usually for takeoff, it would be like 1.8 or something like that. But again, it would depend on our particular flight there. All right. We have good starts on all engines. Let's go ahead and pop this out of the start position into the idle position like that. It should spin up the rest of the way. And I got to turn my volume down because unfortunately I'm getting deafened here. Nice. Reach above our heads. Good time to secure those switches. We want to get the APU out of the loop immediately because the APU, of course, is now basically getting air blown back into it, which is kind of dangerous. All right, swinging back up here. We're going to go ahead and get our next air compressors and bleeds open. Give it a few moments. We're going to get a little warning here. It's going to spin up, and now we've got air pressurization, which is delightful. That looks good to me. That looks good to me. And now, believe it or not, we are now ready to go ahead and kick on the bleeds. Or I should say, kick on the packs. We're going to take the switch and snap it up. It's a big, heavy switch. We push it forward. We should get a PSI drop here. Oh, we didn't, but that's okay. We can also see that our generators, of course, are already connected. So everything's moving very, very smoothly as far as that goes. Our APUs now can be knocked off every online here. So I'm going to come down here, pop the generator off. You're supposed to let this thing cool off a little bit, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to pop it off instead. And while we're here, let's go ahead and take care of our hydraulic pumps. Since we have engine-driven pumps, please do not start the engine with the hydraulic pump running. You will be disappointed in the results, in the real world anyway. In this, you don't have to worry about it that much. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our party here. So we can take a look here that all of the fuel valves are open, and basically the center tank is doing most of the work here. We can actually bypass the wings completely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this real quickly here. One of the things you can see here is that our left tip tank basically emptied this thing out, which I find kind of interesting. And our center tank naturally can carry substantially more, if you want to kind of think of it this way. They kind of made this a little challenging to understand, but the important thing to realize as we're sitting here just kind of idling, let me go ahead and kick the power up a little bit here. There it goes. As we're kicking our power, you can see that it's basically kind of draining from everybody more or less equally, with the center tank not really pulling a lot of weight here just because of the nature of the imbalance and pressures of the various systems that we have on board. So as you can see, complex aircraft. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip up here. Since we know everything's working, I can go pop it onto the essential. I can go pop this onto the generators and check them to make sure they're all behaving properly, which I'm pretty confident they are. This is also a great time, of course, to see that the pressurization's working. We've got it up pretty high, so if we wanted to theoretically test it, we could sit here and go in here and crank this like this. That would slam the valve closed, and you'd see the vertical speed. It would actually spike downwards in the real world. But again, like I said, because of the way that that works. Actually, let's go do it. Let's see if it works. So theoretically, we should be able to override that. And what that would do, of course, is cause our altitude to dive. But they're being gentle to our ears, I suppose. I'm not going to worry about it too much. All right, so let's come back here. Don't panic on those lights. They're not actually warning lights. But what I am going to do is look up above my head and get a last couple switches while we're here. Let's see here. Probe heat's going to come on. This one's next. We're going to get all of our other heats here. 1, 2, 3. We're going to make sure those are all set to the on position. We're going to come over to our yaw damper. Without this, we have no automatic pilot, which is kind of a pain in the butt, if you ask me. That's all set. We don't need any wing anti-ice or anything. We don't need any windshield wipers. We don't need any lights. This thing is ready to go. My goodness, if you didn't think that took a while, imagine doing it with a crew of 4 sitting up here. They're up on instruments there. One thing I'll do too while I'm at it is I'm just going to put on the compensator here so we can deal with that. Excellent. On our next video, what we'll do is we'll pick up where we left off. We'll take ourselves on a nice little flight now that everything's kind of all squared away over here. And then we'll show you how annoying this thing is to get on the ground. Enjoy.